I'm Steve.
And I'm Sandy, and we're two Tenderfoot tourists. Welcome to episode 121, The Future of Cruising.
Every day is a new day.
Today on Two Tenderfoot Tourists, we're going to talk about where the cruise lines will be in the next year or so.
And according to the social distancing, we're doing an online interview with
Justin and Wendy.
Right, our specialists in the cruising field. We're really looking forward to talking to them today. It's going to be a really good conversation, as always.
Looking forward to it. Two Tenderfoot Tourists is a family-friendly podcast. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify, just to name a few.
To get in touch with us and chat about this podcast or even your travel experiences, simply email us at tenderfoottourists@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to check out our website at tenderfoottourists.com. That's TWO, tenderfoottourists.com. So, welcome back, Justin and Wendy.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Good to be back.
So glad to have you guys on the podcast.
It's going to be interesting because this is our first phone interview we've done with two people on the other end. So, it'll be interesting, but we'll get her done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it's just not going to work, is it, baby?
Stop messing with it.
I can't help myself. I'm obsessed now. I'm trying to video this at the same time, and, well, my equipment is like, how should you say, something you'd find out of a toy out of a cereal box. Sort of affair going here. Okay, so, hey, listen, I'm so glad you guys wanted to be on the podcast. I know that it was a struggle for Wendy to come on because I know how much she absolutely hates discussing things about cruises.
I can't stand it.
Well, okay, so tell everyone who's listening, in case this is the first time I ever heard you. Now, what is your experience with cruises? I mean, like how?
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Well, we're veteran cruisers. I think we've been on 8 cruises now.
I think 7.
7 cruises
our
now.
most recent one got canceled.
So 7 cruises now. Most of those 7-day cruises. We started cruising basically because my wife, she asked me for many years. We've been married 20 years, and she asked me for many years to go on a cruise. And I was a child of the 70s, and I remember watching Love Boat, and I thought, nah, it's not for me. You know, postage stamp pool and everyone shacking up. No, this isn't a good thing. But I realized that vacations really weren't a vacation for her because we would go on vacation. We would basically take whirlwind tours of major cities within a few days' time in a state or a different part of the country. And she would have to pack and unpack all the time, and I could just tell it wasn't really that fun for her. And so I decided, okay, well, let's try the cruising, and we both were hooked the very first day, and we've been cruising ever since for our vacations.
Most of our cruises have been on Royal Caribbean, and we've went from the small ships all the way to the mega ships. And like Justin said, most of the itineraries have been 7-day cruises, but we did do a celebrity 11-night cruise in the fall.
Yes.
Well, and you also went on the little short cruise with us for our first cruise, which we appreciate because you're the ones that led us into the industry. So, very cool.
Very, very cool.
Yes.
So, I mean, basically what it comes down to is you guys were really racking up it comes to the actual cruise line. Yeah, cruise points, right?
Yes, we're platinum.
You're platinum.
Look at you go.
Yes. Well, and as you said, I think Justin said that you did have you had a cruise that was canceled in April due to the outbreak. Now everything's kind of teetering with whether or not the cruise industry is going to actually survive this plague, basically, that's overtaken the entire world. There's speculations of what it's going to look like once this pandemic is actually, the dust settles and everything like that. How is the cruise line going to fare when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to turn out, to be honest with you. I know that COVID-19 has hit that industry in a big way. and for obvious reasons. You're confined with a lot of people in a small area, relatively small area compared to living here on land. And it can be an incubator for the virus being passed pretty quickly. And there are still cruise ships right now, as of the time that we recorded this podcast, who are still out to sea, who are not being allowed to port because they have COVID patients on their ships. Some of them are dead even on the ships right now because of the virus.
Right.
And,
which is tragic.
Yes, it is. And I think that the issue with the industry, there's a lot of unforeseen things. One of them being, if they can be bailed out even as an industry, because most cruise ships do not have their holdings or their main offices within the United States. They're usually in other countries. I think that it's going to have lasting effects even after the virus is mitigated, because I think the effects of it will last long after the whole virus issue, because people will still be wary of going on a cruise ship, still with it in their mind that the potential is there for the virus to outbreak. And not only that, but the thing that struck me the most about this is, let's say you're unafraid and you go on the cruise ship, but the problem is a lot of these passengers are being stuck out to sea, and they're all either that or they're also being, even when they get off the ship, they're quarantined for 2 weeks. So I don't think a lot of people are going to go very soon anyway, en masse on cruise ships until some time has passed. What do you think?
I think I agree with that. Although we're on some Facebook groups where there's people that they're like, if they opened up tomorrow, I would go tomorrow. But you also have a lot of other people that they've planned vacations around certain re-amplifications on ships and different things. And since the companies are putting those things on hold, a lot of people are thinking about changing their plans as well, because there's just so much that's up in the air right now.
I told Steve, he felt very positive about it at one point. I don't know if he still does after a lot of conversation and research, but that he felt like it's really going to just boom after everybody gets the all clear. I felt that it probably is really going to struggle for a while.
Yeah, I think it is going to struggle for a little bit. I think eventually it'll get back to its normal levels as far as an industry is concerned. It's actually grown a lot. The demographics have grown a lot. It's not just a newlywed or nearly dead proposition as it used to be. There are lots of young people going on cruises now, and so I think eventually it'll come back, and if it can survive all of this, it also depends on how many weeks or months this industry's closed, just like a lot of industries right now all over the world and in our country. I know something related to that too is the TAs, the travel agencies. A lot of them are shutting down as well, and I don't know how many of them will survive through all this either. There are a lot of travel industries, even in our hometown travel agencies, who have already shuttered their business. They shut the doors. They've laid lots of people off, or they've encouraged them to retire early. So it has a trickle-down effect. It's not just the cruising. There's a lot of other kind of, I would say, bedroom industries involved with the cruising that will be greatly affected because of this.
Yeah,
it's quite the ripple effect, is essentially, isn't it?
Right.
One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is several of the cruise companies are, so that they can continue to have cash flow with all these canceled sailings, they are offering either full refunds, cash refunds, or a bigger incentive. Like for our Royal Caribbean cruise that was canceled, we were offered a future cruise credit of 125% of the value that we paid for the cruise to use at a later time. That doesn't include like the taxes and the port fees and everything, but just the base cruise rate. And so my wondering is if, in a sense, robbing Peter to pay Paul, once everybody starts cashing in on those, if it's going to continue to upset the whole industry.
Oh, you make a very good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, there can be a lot of promises made, but can they fulfill all that?
Yeah, I also think there's going to be a lot of new regulations come out of this whole virus thing, whether it's imposed on by the government or maritime law or just the self-imposed. But I can see now actually having more advanced health checks as a normal process and I think that could really affect a lot of the cruise industry, because there is a large demographic in the cruise industry that are older people. So they may restrict people with underlying health conditions now. I don't know, but it's definitely a possibility, because we know from this virus that people who have compromised health issues are the ones that this virus hurts the most. So I could see them kind of enacting some more stricter health-related processes that may actually affect the industry in the long run. I don't know.
Even before we started seeing the cancellations of some of these cruises because of the COVID-19, Royal Caribbean, for example, sent out a document that if a person was over the age of 70, they had to have it filled out and signed by the doctor saying that they were in good health, without like diabetes or heart issues or things like that, to be able to cruise. And again, from like Facebook, groups and things like that, we saw a lot of cruisers that they're like, our doctor doesn't want that liability of signing that, so they're not going to sign it. So that means that we can't cruise. So if you see that carry over in future sailings, like Justin said, for just heightened health screenings, then that could, cause a lot of people in that age group not to cruise anymore.
You're basically looking at someone's going to have to present some sort of credentials that says, yes, I'm fit for going on a cruise, essentially.
Yeah.
As well as a passport, essentially.
Yeah, not just that. As we're talking here, I'm thinking, not only may those health screenings be imposed upon the passengers when they embark on the sailing ships, but every port they go to may have some kind of medical process for you to get past the port authority gates. So I could see, because this is a worldwide pandemic, so most of the countries in the world have been affected by it. So I could see actually these other ports that you go to implementing some kind of health screen as well. And here's the thing, if all these health screens are not universal in the way they measure things, then you could go to one port, be fine, be able to experience that port, and go to the next one and not have the same variables, and you might not gain access to that. So that would affect a lot of things. That would affect also all your excursions that you had planned for that day at that port.
That is so true.
I was going to say, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, can you imagine you're ready for your day, you're excited, you're there, you're going through the gates, and they come up and say they're taking temperatures.
Yeah.
And maybe your temperature's off just a little bit that day.
Yeah.
And nope, back to the ship you go.
Yeah, and I think that at least in the interim, they will do those kinds of things. It may slack off over time if the virus has been mitigated, but I can see that definitely happening as the cruise industry, if it's able to survive, that whenever it rebounds, it'll have those kinds of measures to take place. So I can see a lot of people that would have normally cruised of a certain age level not being able to cruise anymore, being very restricted.
Well, and we're even seeing at the short term that ports like Seattle has completely closed down, and they even said indefinitely, which would be a huge impact on Alaska cruises specifically.
Wow. See, I hadn't heard that bit of news. Now, the kind of things that I've been hearing is that the cruise lines are laying off tens of thousands of people, or in the process of laying off.
Actually, I think what he said is he thought that that would be what we would see in the end.
Oh, that's okay.
Is around 10,000 people or more.
then you and I were talking about that and how it affects, like, not only are you got people not having a job eventually, but also maybe mothballing some of the ships or dry docking some of the ships because it costs a lot in order to keep them running. And if they don't have enough people to actually run them, and just from what you're talking about right now, you're saying there are ports that are actually closing and not reopening.
At least until it's completely clear. They haven't put
okay.
They hope.
As I say, and also the thing is that, this pandemic, it migrates. So just because it's over in, let's say, the United States, or it's mitigated in the United States, doesn't mean that it is in the rest of the world.
That's true.
This may go on for 12, 18 months.
We don't know.
Just from it going from country to country. So the potential is that these cruise lines have to weather the storm for a year or a year and a half. I don't know if they're capable of doing that. And if they're not bailed out by the United States government through this, even though they operate within our ports, but if they don't actually have their holdings here, they don't actually have their physical headquarters here, and they're licensed in other, there's a lot of these smaller countries that they are that they have their headquarters in and that they're licensed in, that they would have a hard time bailing their own country out, let alone any kind of industry like that. So I don't know.
Do you think that the U.S. government should give a bailout to the cruise industry?
Well, that's one of the controversial things right now within government and within the talking heads is, there's like Josh Hawley, one of our congressmen, who was saying that if this industry wants to get bailed out, then they need to have their headquarters and to have their licensing and all that in the United States.
Which would really change the industry big time because
it would be very expensive.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. It'll raise the prices of any of your cruises out there. Because since then, I think it's like they what's that called? Where they raise the flag on their ships. They're working under convenience or something like that. What is that called?
I can't remember what it's called.
Do you remember what I'm talking?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
We watched that video. I figured you would have remembered. No, your memory's better than mine. But anyway, but basically what it is they're not restrained to laws that are here in the U.S., but basically
right.
And so if they are going to be under U.S. law and everything like that, that is going to raise the prices dramatically, I would assume.
Yes, because you can kind of get a glimpse of what that would cost, because there is one ship that's totally ran by Americans. That's a cruise ship in Hawaii called Pride of the Americas.
Oh.
And I can't remember if that's a Carnival ship or a Royal Caribbean ship, but that cruise is very expensive because it has an entire crew of U.S. citizens.
Okay.
And so their pay scale is a lot higher, and thus the cruise is a lot higher.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something else me and Sandy also figured out. Okay. Just piggybacking upon the whole idea, these other countries that have ports and stuff like that, and the fact that these cruise ships do have people from other countries that are being employed, they're going to be out without a job, possibly, and on top of that, they're not going to be able to support their families back at home. It's kind of like a domino effect. I mean, this virus is pretty much not only just decimated, not really decimated, but I mean, it's really made the cruise industry with a real severe limp at this point. But it's also hurting other countries who are relying on that income, basically. I don't know where.
Oh yes, there are entire ports and regions that their majority of their income comes from the tourism of cruise ships. So if you're talking about like St. Thomas and St. Martin and St. Kitts, all those little islands there, they like a huge majority of their income comes from tourism, comes from ships and boats coming to their harbors to spend their money. So I'm sure they're really hurting right now.
So I'm under the opinion that maybe they shouldn't get a bailout, and just based upon something that someone had told to me. Now, he used this as an example. He said that Royal Caribbean last year made in the billions and billions of dollars. But at the same time, he said the reason why they shouldn't get a bailout, and this kind of leads into what you were saying before, was the fact that they're not really considered a U.S. company. They're really they're more of a foreign company that is kind of using our ports here, essentially, and they're not held to a lot of the U.S. laws that a lot of other industries that are here. So they probably shouldn't be getting that bailout. What do you think of that?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it, I guess.
Me too.
I'm looking at all the bedroom industries to it. There's industries here that service cruise ships that if they don't have the cruise ships, there's people definitely going to be losing jobs, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the food service, most of the food from these cruise ships comes from the port of embarkation. And so most of that food comes in from the U.S. onto those cruise ships that port here is their home ports.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all the port authority people that work, all the porters, all the security, all the parking establishments. All that stuff supports. And if those cruise ships are gone, all those folks that are part of that, part of servicing that industry, are going to lose their jobs. So bailing out the cruise industry, it would be a mixed bag, I think. It would be bailing out a company that doesn't have its holdings here, but it's also bailing out a company that a lot of folks in our country are employed to service those cruise ships. So I don't know.
Now, do you think any of these companies will end up going belly up? And what do you think the odds of that are?
So these cruise lines?
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, what do you think?
I don't know if they'll necessarily go belly up, but I think they'll definitely have to kind of rethink how they do things, such as like what their prices are,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's just so much that's up in the air, and it's so new here to the U.S. Where we're having to deal with it that we don't know how long it's going to last. And I think that's like a big determining factor on how long it's going to take to recover.
Right.
If it's just a few months, then it's going to be a lot less time for them to recoup than if it is a year or a year and a half.
Right.
So it's just too soon to tell.
I think if some of them were to go belly up, it would be because of their demographic. Like a Royal Caribbean, I don't know if they would actually go belly up. I think that if it can weather the whole shutdown and come back online, I think it would eventually be fine. I think the ones that are catered to mainly an older demographic, those are the ones that could possibly go belly up. And I'm saying that they probably go belly up after the whole virus issue.
Right.
When they don't have enough passenger counts on their ships. Because I can definitely see older people, and rightfully so for some of them, especially with their compromised health issues, being very concerned about going on a cruise ship again. And, the Holland Americans of the world and the Princess Cruise Lines of the world, those that cater to an older clientele, they could potentially go under, I would say. Also, the ones that, like you talked about earlier, the ones that don't manage their companies well financially, they could definitely go under too.
Right.
But I don't know. I know it's a big industry, and I know it employs a lot of people, not just in other countries, but in our own country. And it would mean a lot of job loss for people, especially those people who the bedroom industries to service the cruise ships. Yeah, I just think that it'll be a watch and see. And if they're bailed out, they'll come back. It will be gradual. I don't see them being flooded with people in the beginning. as long as the memory of COVID-19 is in people's minds, there'll be people, especially older people, who will be worried about going on a cruise ship again and being confined in a smaller area. So I think you're going to get a lot of good pricing. So if you really love cruising and you're going to continue to go, I think you're going to find some good deals. But I think
that is if the rules don't change. That is right.
But I think it's going to take a while for it to come back and for people to not be afraid to go on them.
Right.
So I don't know.
Something else you mentioned the other night was that they had concerns that the virus could be a annual thing, kind of like the flu. Just that, and that right there in itself is another reason why to be concerned, because they still haven't come up with a
vaccine.
A vaccine, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, if they don't come up with a vaccine and there is the chance of it coming again and that it's seasonal, that will definitely affect the cruise lines for sure going forward. And it will be compounded then. If they find a vaccine and people are like, okay, I can get vaccinated, I'll be fine, I think that may be a different story. But if there's not a vaccine and it is a seasonal thing, I think that's definitely going to wreak havoc on the cruise lines for sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what the cruise line is going to be like as far as how they change the way they allow people board and off board and ports and stuff like that. It's really going to be a game changer. I think that also that it's going to put people in a different pricing bracket, basically, whenever everybody would think that. I think that it's possible that the cruise industry is going to. Okay, one of the things that we liked about the cruising is the fact that it was essentially very affordable, and you can get a really good. I mean, it's a really good deal. You get to go to other countries. You get served really good food.
If you didn't want anything extra, it was all included.
It was all included. I mean, all those factors play in, and I fear that it's going to be so expensive now. It's going to be priced out of our market in like obtaining a good vacation on a cruise ship is what concerns me.
I don't know.
So I don't know.
I can see it actually being cheaper as I get started up again to generate business and to entice people to come back. If they start making them businesses, and I just can't imagine this happening, but if there's some crazy reason they did, where they're U.S. based businesses and they only used U.S. employees, then it's definitely going to be. I think you could, like you said, you can look to the Pride of America as an example of that. It's going to be a lot more expensive experience.
Which really kind of makes my heart go out to some of these countries that were relying on this income. It really does. It makes me feel bad for them because everything just got so jacked up.
And you're talking about the workers.
Yeah, the workers.
The cruise ships, yeah. I know a lot lot of those people send money home. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Yeah, because we talked to a lot of them while we were there on board the cruise ship.
Yeah.
And you're going like, oh, okay, well, it's a noble thing that they were doing. They were there to earn a paycheck and provide good service and everything like that. And
all of our service was good, always.
All of it. And it made me feel good about the gratuities.
Yeah,
all that.
A lot of those employees, they actually take care of their entire families back home. Even though we would, as Americans, look at their wages as low, in their countries, most of those countries, they're not. They were high wages or good wages. So,
yeah, I saw like a statistic, or I heard a statistic that said that like about 12% of the cruise industry is actually American. I believe that's what
it's
very extremely low. So, I mean, that's an income that these people really desperately need. So, and it's just. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's the way I was going to put it, too.
Thank you guys for coming onto the podcast and discussing this issue with us.
Yeah, anytime.
It's a new world out there.
Yeah.
And hopefully the next...
Anytime you want to talk about it, we're here.
Hopefully the next time we talk about this, it'll be more positive and uplifting. But in the meantime, we'll all be hopeful, right?
Awesome. You guys are awesome.
Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Well, that was nice having them on our podcast, wasn't it?
It was. It's always a great episode when they're on here.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening to episode number
121, The Future of Cruising.
Two Tenderfoot Tourists is a family-friendly podcast. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify, just to name a few.
That threw me so bad, you have no idea.
That's okay.
To get in touch with us and chat about this podcast or even your travel experiences, simply email us at tenderfoottourist@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to check out our website at tenderfoottourist.com. That's TWO, tenderfoottourist.com.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Sandy.
Until next time,
stay tender.